If I was to start my studio from scratch today, these are the 5 steps I would take. So the first step I would take is to get a DAW that you like. For me, I really love Ableton Live. The reason I love Ableton Live so much is it's really easy to get ideas out fast, and the production process is really smooth and allows me to be creative really easily. I could also suggest FL Studio as a good DAW, Logic Pro as a good DAW, and this is if you're doing electronic music. If you're going to be doing rock or any kind of recording, I would go with Pro Tools. Although I've never used Cubase, I've heard Cubase is also a good choice. I personally started on Reason 4.0 back in the day, and they've made a lot of improvements in their DAW. I'm assuming it's a pretty good DAW at this point, and if it's what you can get your hands on, I think that's the best choice, to just get something that you can at least start to learn how to produce music with. The second thing I would do if I was to start my studio from scratch is to subscribe to Splice Sounds. I think it's about $7 a month, and you get, I think, 300 downloads a month of any samples, and they have so many options of samples. They've probably got thousands upon thousands of different kick drums per genre, so you shouldn't be lacking at all with the selection of claps, snares, hats, even bass sounds, anything that, pretty much any kind of sample they have. They even have Foley if you need some ambient noises, or chairs sliding, whatever you want. The other thing that's awesome about Splice is they have plugins, and you can do this rent to own, where you rent. So for example, Serum you can rent for $10 a month, and you can, I think, end up owning it. I don't think it's for 19 months. Yep, rent to own. And they also have some free ones. I remember I got my Camel Crusher from Splice, and they have the OTT for free, and they have all these different instruments that you can rent to own, and it just helps you to be able to just start producing music with quality plugins. The third thing I would do if I was to start my studio from scratch is to get the Slate Everything bundle. And what this is it's a bundle of all these different plugins down here. And honestly, they're really good. I use these every mix. I use Slate plugins. I use the Stressor a lot. I use the Verb Suites. This is my favorite reverb right now. They have lots of old vintage reverbs built into it. And what I love about Slate is they emulate actual hardware really well. So what you hear is what an actual hardware would sound like for the most part. They're really good at it. And the other thing is they have the FGX mastering processor. So if you're concerned about getting your track loud enough to be able to play it in a club, this is at least a good beginner mastering tool. And it has a wide variety of top of the line compressors and pretty much any type of mixing thing you would need for literally $15 a month, which is crazy. And what's also cool about this is when you subscribe, Steven Slate will give you a link to a video that's 10 hours long, separated between the different elements of this song, and he shows you how to mix a rock song with only Slate plugins. And so it's good to be able to learn what each of these plugins do, and kind of the characteristics of the FGN EQ compared to the custom series EQ, and the differences between the Blue Series compressor versus the VCA compressor right here, the FG 401. So that's what's so awesome about Slate is you get all these plugins, and whenever they come out with a new one, for example, the Stress only came out a few months ago, you just download it for free, and you keep getting updated, and you keep getting new plugins, and they're pretty consistent on coming out with new plugins. I really love Slate plugins. They sound really, really good. And if anytime people ask me how I get a analog sound, it's always the Slate plugins I'm using. So good. The fourth thing I would do if I was to start my studio from scratch is to get a solid interface, a solid pair of monitors, as in like studio monitors, like speakers, and then also get a pair of headphones if you're in an apartment or in a place where you can't really have loud music all the time or even at specific times. Or if you like to work late, you probably should get headphones. So I would shop around and read reviews on what you find to be good. Here are some of the suggestions I would give if I was to buy an interface. The first would be the Scarlett 2i2 by Focusrite. I honestly have this one right now, and I don't know if I would fully recommend it. I've recently started having some issues with it, with distortion in the microphone, and it's purely from that, because when I take the microphone and cable to another interface, it's clean. And the same with like when I plug in a synth, it's kind of giving me issues, but it's only $149. And the friends that I have that have this same interface haven't had these issues, so I might just have a weird one. But this is only $149. And what I do is I have it plugged into the Behringer. It's practically like the Mackie Big Knob, but half the price. Shout out Behringer for always doing that with all their products. And this is amazing because you can be able to control your studio volume really easily. And then you can have multiple outputs with your monitors. So you can have like 2 or 3 monitors if you wanted to, like pairs of monitors. And you can also have 3 different 1/4 inch inputs and then 1 RCA input. So what I do is I have my Scarlett 2i2 plugged into this, and then this is like my main interface. So that's what I do. So this is my main listening interface, whereas the Scarlett's my main recording interface, if that makes sense. For my monitors, I have the Focal Alphas, the 65s, which are 6.5 inch woofer cones right here. And these are really good if you're in an apartment or a smaller room. They have a lot of low end still. I think it goes down to at least like 40 hertz, which is the lowest most subs go is like 30 hertz and maybe 25, but a lot of people in the mastering process will filter out the really lows. But this is enough, honestly, 40 hertz, especially in a small bedroom. And if you really need to check low ends, I would suggest getting headphones anyways, because that's when you can really hear the low end. And then there's some tricks you can do to be able to isolate the low end with just headphones, and so you can get a better idea of how it's sounding and if it's really, really boomy or not. But I would suggest getting the Focals or the Yamahas. There's also some KRKs that are good. Once again, shop around. This is all depending on taste. I've used Focal for a while, which is why I got Focal Alphas from my home studio. And that's also the same reason why I have Focal headphones, is because it matches up. That's the other thing, is if you're in an apartment, get a pair of headphones that match up with your monitors. If they're too expensive for your budget, then I would suggest getting the Sony Professionals, the Sony 506s. These are like the industry standards for tracking. So not necessarily mixing, but they're $100, and I used these for the first like 5 years of my mixing, and I was mixing or mastering people's tracks professionally with these headphones, which is kind of crazy. I didn't tell any of my clients I was doing that, but no one could tell the difference, and they all like the masters. So, who cares? It doesn't matter how you get it done, but what matters is what's coming out of their speakers and everywhere else. And there's lots of tricks you can do to be able to test your songs on different speakers and stuff to make sure that you're getting the right balance, even with headphones. So if you are in an apartment, you need a cheap pair of headphones that are good, I would suggest these. The fifth thing I would do if I was to start my studio from scratch would be to actually pay for mastering rather than trying to master everything myself. The reason being is mastering is actually affordable. You can find mastering as cheap as $30 to $50, and those will be people that are a little less experienced than me, like 3-4 years of experience. When you get to the guys that are in the 40s and 50s, they're probably going to be charging around $150. But if you're a beginner or intermediate, you don't need to be paying that much money for mastering, because let's be realistic, your music's not going to be that good compared to these guys that are being played on the radio or at these, these huge events. Like, you're still learning and developing. And so I wouldn't spend much money on your mastering. And the last thing you want to do is be spending $300 on a limiter to be able to try to attempt mastering. But in reality, mastering requires a lot different ear than it is with mixing. It's a lot of tiny EQing and a lot of tiny bumps here and there with compression and saturation to be able to get the mix a little more balanced and punchier, or whatever the problem is, and get to as loud as it needs to be. So it's a lot of fine tuning, whereas mixing can make a few errors here and there, and it can be saved in the mastering process. Obviously to a point, right? But I felt like, for me, I spent way too much time learning how to master, and whereas I should have just had someone else master for me. Plus, I would have learned a lot quicker because I would have had someone else telling me what my mistakes were and say like, hey, your bass is way too loud. Like, this is a really boomy track. You should try filtering out the lows a little bit better, because that was one of my issues when I was starting out, was I just wanted a lot of bass. And when I played on a big system, after having the song released for like 2 months and finding out that it's just super boomy, it's like, oh crap, oh well, now what, So that's my fifth suggestion, is definitely get your tracks mastered by someone else rather than mastering yourself and spending the money to get mastering tools for yourself. As a bonus, I feel like if you have the budget and you're in a room that can allow you to be able to put things on the wall, I would suggest getting sound absorption panels and sound diffusers and tune your room the best you can. There's these softwares and things like that will help you figure out where to place those panels and how thick of panels you need, as well as like lots of tutorials online to kind of show you how to do that. But that is, I feel like, the best investment if you're in a place where you're actually going to use monitors and not headphones at all, like you have a house or an actual dedicated studio. But if you're in an apartment, I almost feel like it's not worth it if you're going to be using headphones most of the time. For myself, I only have panels behind my monitors. I'm literally in a living room with a kitchen behind me. So there's no way I can really tune this room effectively without my wife killing me. So I have to use headphones and use my monitors as like reference to be able to hear the mids and highs and do like a quick balance and mix, and then I put my headphones on. So this is, I think, the best investment if you're able to do it. Waves Gold bundle is a really good bundle. It has the C4, which I use on every mix. I use it almost as a glue compressor. The de-esser is my favorite de-esser. The L1 I use a lot for trimming up peaks, like on my snares and stuff like that. The H comp and the H delay are really good for delays and compression. The Renaissance is really good. In general, like, it's worth the money. Even the Max Bass is really good for saturation for your low end. Like, it has a lot of really good tools, and they're always on sale. Like, they goes on sale all the time. When I first bought it, it was the lowest it had ever been, which was $200. So they're still lowering the price a little bit more here and there with their sales. So wait till it's on sale, which they do almost every holiday, I feel like, and buy it then. And honestly, you'll be set. I would also look at Ozone. They have now the Ozone 8. And this is really good for, I know it's a mastering plugin, but it's really good for even the mix down, to be able to add imaging and to be able to add saturation on specific frequencies with a multi-band setting, and to be able to add just a little bit of EQ and whatever you need to at the end. The other product I would suggest is the Sound Toys products. These plugins are really good. If you're a student, I would suggest obviously getting the academic version. It's the exact same version, just half the cost. And that's the thing with all these plugins. If you are a student right now, always search for a student discount, because every time it's 50% off, which is crazy. Even with Ableton, I bought Ableton 50% off, SoundToys 50% off, Ozone 50% off. Like all these plugins, you can get 50% off rather than paying the full cost, and it helps you really get started. And so that's what I would suggest is SoundToys. They have really good delays. The capitator is really good for saturation. I use the Devil Lock as one of my favorite saturators as a return track saturator or auxiliary track, whatever you want, whichever DAW you're using. They've got such a good sound to them. Once again, this is just my personal take on it. These are my favorite plugins and my favorite websites that I am using right now after doing this for 7 years. And as you can see, it's not that costly if you just understand what's out there. A lot of these plugins and a lot of these DAWs are starting to go more subscription based, which is really awesome for beginners and people trying to actually get their hands on these products. And rather than having to torrent and steal them, you can actually do it legally and get everything for a really good cost. And so, yeah, thanks again, guys, for watching this, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. If you like this video, hit that like button, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And if you're interested in taking your music to the next level, I offer other services like mixing and mastering and song critique. So check out my website to learn more about those services, follow me on social media to keep up to date with what I'm doing, and I'll see you next time.